Whenever there's a natural disaster, SBA is among the first agencies to step forward, and certainly Hawaii has had its share of nationally declared disasters. And I want to thank you and Administrator Guzman and all of the men and women who work at SBA for being there as they have been. It's clear that the prior administration did not set up adequate protections against fraud, waste, and abuse. So I get that you're doing everything you can to ameliorate those deficiencies. And the PPP and EIDL were massive, massive programs. And in fact, you have about 4 million loans that are coming due. And did you not request additional resources for SBA so that you can process these loans that are coming due?
Yes, I believe the 2023 budget makes a request for the servicing. And what you're referencing is beginning in October, so less than 60 days from now, we will begin to service payments. As the committee knows, and as you know, Senator, there was 30 months of deferment. I am pleased to report that a third of COVID EIDL recipients have already made payments, even during the deferment, so that's encouraging. But yes, we will begin servicing. That number, obviously, as Chairman Carmen referenced in his opening remarks, is a massive number, so we will need resources.
Mr. Chairman, I hope that we are going to be supporting the administration's request for additional resources. Otherwise, you're going to have, I would say, just the word chaos comes to mind as the SBA does its best with its resources to administer all these loans. You've heard a lot about people in our own states, and we've all been getting phone calls. And the issue for me is that there are people who applied for these loans who were told that things were going well. They were following up on all of the requested information, et cetera. And then finally to be told by the SBA that the program ran out of funds. And then the next thing they heard was that no, the issue for this particular applicant, I'm talking about an applicant called Maikai Health Corporation, which is a nonprofit organization that takes care of the healthcare needs. But the next time they hear is that they were actually in the situation where they have made exaggerated projections of 2021 expenses and did not file their 990 tax return. I don't know what that is. So they're getting two different pieces of information. So what are they supposed to do? Because the second one sounds serious. When you're exaggerating your costs, that sounds like fraud. So what are they supposed to do? Because originally they were not told that they were in a situation where they had to deal with what sounds like fraud.
So, first off, yes, not filing your taxes is fraud. Yes, so it is a criminal offense. For this particular program, the 2019 return is the return that we're leveraging. Those returns needed to be filed, even with extensions, by the fall of 2020. Yes, and the reason there's a disconnect, I believe, and I work on this every day, and I just want to say for the committee, and it's important just to say personally, I come from a town, Manchester, Connecticut, where the median income is $61,000. It's under the national average. In my community, behind us was a dentist. Across from us was a steak owner, and around the corner was a franchise owner for Dairy Queen, obviously our favorite. So I want people to get capital, and as does the administrator. But the reason that they cannot get capital and were able and believe that they are eligible in the first place is because they did get capital in 2020, even with those issues. And so it's important to understand that original choice with respect to the tax filings has a ripple through the process.
So assuming that is there any way for this nonprofit agency to remedy its situation? I mean, I think they can, exaggerated projections for 2021, that's probably in dispute. But whether or not they file a 990, that is an objective criteria. Is that something they can remedy? So that assuming they still need these funds and you have funds, that they can pursue the funds?
Yeah, so I think, so first off, just obviously, as I've indicated, this is a credit not available elsewhere program, so we take extraordinary lengths together, and I think it's appropriate for the public sector to, for example, originate loans with a 570 credit score, which of course in the private sector would be difficult to get. On this particular issue, though, on whether or not you filed, and the fact that the increase request that you were seeking is not supported by the tax information or the financial information that you provided, I believe that we need to draw the line there, and I've recommended to the administrator that that's what we do. So, and I guess the last thing I would say is there is no comparable process in the private sector for appeal or reconsideration. And I will say every time that I said yes when I was lending, and I lent $500 million to federal government contractors across the country, minority, women, veteran-owned, every time I said yes, I was the greatest banker in the history of the world.
Understand.
And the next day when I said no, I was the worst banker in the history of the world.
So with regard to this particular nonprofit, then, the answer is no, because they didn't file, they either filed the 990 or they didn't, and if they didn't file it, this disallows their increased request. That's my conclusion. They just need to know one way or the other, I'd say.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's their situation. Thank you. I know, Mr. Chairman, that with the millions of loans and everything that happened and the PPP and the EIDL program, there were people that came out of the woodwork to take advantage of this program. And one last question is, who is prosecuting all the people who were engaged in fraud in these two programs?
Yeah, so as you know, and Senator Ernst also referenced this, the Biden-Harris administration designated a team at DOJ to focus on fraud, waste, and abuse associated with CARES Act programs. And as I understand it, both the House and the Senate are moving bills along to extend statutory limitations, which obviously will support their efforts because, as the license plate shows, folks do need to be held accountable for where it's appropriate.
Do you have any idea, one last question, do you have any idea how many people have already been indicted?
So I don't.
These two programs?
I don't. And I do want to clarify something. I know this committee knows, so maybe reaching across the committee out to the C-SPAN public. SBA is not an enforcement agency. So unlike the SEC, unlike the bank regulatory bodies, we administer programs, certifications for government. I know everybody knows this, but we rely on the Office of the Inspector General primarily, and then, of course, they work with Secret Service at Treasury as well as DOJ, Department of Justice. So we can assist the IG, and one of the primary ways to do that is allowing Inspector General personnel on a daily basis to have access to any and all data related to anything across all of these programs. And Administrator Guzman, upon being sworn in, actually preceding her when I took my position in March 1st of 2020, we restored that. And so the IG has daily access to anything and everything they want. And obviously, as Senator Ernst referenced, the administrator has designated a front office person to coordinate with those other bodies on this. She meets every 2 weeks with the Inspector General. And her directive to us has been and will continue to be completely open, completely cooperative. I want fraudsters put in jail because the 32 million small businesses are the people that employ 2/3 of this nation, and they were my neighbors and my friends and my relatives growing up.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'll point out that Senator Paul and I have worked together. The legislation you referred to passed the Senate this week. It's on the way to the President for signature, extending the statute of limitations.
Great.